Greetings, Guardians, it's Mano 777, and we're back inside of Destiny. Well, guys, the meta is about to change again. So we have some of the most broad, sweeping changes that are about to happen to the sandbox in terms of class balance that we have seen in a long time. Tomorrow, June 14th, Destiny Update 2.3.0 is going to drop, and so they dropped a preview into the Bungie news for both class balance, and there's some slight weapons balancing that is going to go on. So we're going to go through them, tell you a little bit about why we think they're a good thing, a bad thing, and basically go through that with you to give you an idea of what you can expect once this update comes out. So the hunters were the primary focus of this class balance update, so we're going to go through them first. First of all, they're changing the way grenades work on the gunslinger. On the gunslinger, the swarm grenade is going to have an increased aiming radius of 0.5 meters. Swarm grenade, the detonation damage is going to be increased. And now the biggest, most important thing you need to know about the grenades for the gunslinger is that the trip mine is no longer going to stick to enemies, guys. I'm disappointed about this because I always thought that this was a fun way to kill an enemy. I always thought that this was a great way to attack someone who has an overshield, warlocks and titans. It was a nice way to have something in your arsenal to go up against them, but now they're no longer going to attach to enemies. Instead, they are going to arm on impact and bounces. So basically, if you throw a trip mine grenade at an enemy, it's going to bounce around for a second and it's going to hit the ground and then it will arm. In that case, trip mine damage will also be reduced by 3%. Golden Gun was also feeling a bit lackluster. That's what they said, and I kind of agree. There was sometimes when you would actually go up against Titans who would have overshields, especially if they were using no backup plans, and it would be a two-shot kill, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense to use that. So what they did is they changed the base damage of the Golden Gun, increased it by 50%, and gave it an additional 30% against AI combatants. In combination with Deadeye, it now increases Golden Gun damage by an additional 30%. So Deadeye is now going to be used in the ability that they designed it for. The throwing knife is the last thing that they changed in terms of nerfs, and what they did is they said that there was some frustration with people using throwing knives, so what they did is they changed the base damage of the throwing knife and reduced it by 10%, and now they've reworked Circle of Life a little bit. Basically, precision kills with the throwing knife reduce the cooldown of Golden Gun. It no longer extends the duration of Golden Gun, and also Circle of Life will remove just a little bit of armor. There's going to be a little bit of armor taken off of that perk. How do I feel about that? I think that's kind of silly because honestly, for me, reducing throwing knife damage doesn't make any sense because it's so much significantly harder to kill someone with a throwing knife than, say, a grenade that has an area of effect. It's a lot more precision based, and I think you should be rewarded as such. But that's my opinion. But you're going to see that change here coming up. Some perks that are going to happen to the gunslinger. Scavenger, you're going to increase the amount of grenade and melee energy awarded by 33%. Chain of Woe, you're going to have a little bit more recovery as well as Over the Horizon. So that is the gunslinger, guys. Next, let's go to the Blade Dancer. The main problem with Blade Dancer was its ability to pop its super and to basically move around very quickly. It was very difficult to counter, which was a nice thing about the Blade Dancer. If you were using a Blade Dancer, the only thing that could really affect it was the Smash or a Nova Bomb. But now there's a couple of changes to that mobility. Also, they've changed Blink Strike, I think for the better, to what it was originally intended to be. So let's go through that. First of all, when you use the Blink ability, you will now incur a -1 recovery penalty. When you use Blink Strike, your lunge distance is going to be decreased by 0.4 meters. That's to keep people from using Blink Strike to get some long-range distance kills. How do I feel about that? I think that the lunge distance on the Blink Strike was okay already to begin with the changes that I'm going to tell you about here in a second. Blink Strike, many of us know that there was a Blink Strike glitch that was going on. There were a lot of times you could hit people at the side, almost at the front, and you'd be able to use that ability to get the backstab glitch. Also, there were some problems with Escape Artist and Fast Twitch, so they adjusted the Blink Strike in a couple of different ways. First of all, backstab. The valid backstab angle has been reduced by 30 degrees. Escape Artist invisibility effect has been delayed by 0.5 seconds. So if anyone's running Crota, I don't know if anyone would be doing that, but that might take just a split second to proc. So just think about that if you're if you're ever using that ability. Not many people do that right now, but if you ever are running Crota, just for kicks and giggles, just know that that's coming tomorrow. In addition, your fast twitch recharge has been reduced by 20%, so your ability to get your blink strike back up has been reduced just slightly. So Arcblade has seen the greatest number of changes due to its ability to be used as a super that's very mobile. A lot of times top PvP players would use it as a super that would get up and around different enemies. So what they wanted to do is make it more of an exacting super, something that where if you're actually hitting someone and using it in a very decisive way, you would be rewarded with it, whereas you wouldn't just use it and flail around with the Arcblade. So they're trying to make it less of a spam super, less of a panic super, rather than more of an exacting super. So here are the changes. Base duration has been increased by 2 seconds. Hit search range has been increased by 0.5 meters, which means that the hit search range, if someone's a little bit farther away from you, you have a greater chance of seeking them out. They've added a 0.8 second cooldown between Arcblade swings while airborne, which means it's used less as a mobility super to move around characters and more as an ability to do extreme damage to them. Now, the energy cost per swing has increased by 20%. However, the energy cost on hit has been decreased by 20%. So if you actually hit a target, if you're actually close enough to them and within the distance and you hit them, you won't see that energy cost be lost as much. And that's the whole idea, is that you want to be able to use this more as an exacting super, something where you know you're going to hit them rather than just flailing around with the Arcblade hoping that you hit someone. Also, being effective against AI is something that the Blade Dancer has traditionally, since some of the latest patches, have not been good at. So they updated a lot of stuff to go really well in PvE. Now, Arcblade damage is increased by 30% against AI combats. Vanish now causes the players to vanish on cast in addition to its normal function. Showstopper damage bonus has been extended by 1 meter. And Encore killing an enemy with Arcblade now extends its duration and grants a 150% increase to Arcblade damage for a short time. So Encore is going to be a perk that might be something you want to use rather than the ability to get your life back instantly. Really, Encore is going to do a lot more damage. It's going to give you a little bit more time, especially now that they've extended the duration a little bit, but now you get a little bit more damage with your Arcblade damage when you're in PvP as well. Next up, we have Night Stalkers. Night Stalkers have some significant changes that are going to change up their meta, so I'm going to give you my reactions at the end. The Spike Grenade was not being used by anyone in the Crucible as a Night Stalker. Really, you either use Vortex Grenades or you use Void Wall Grenades. So they buffed the Spike Grenades, and what they did is they increased the impulses per second from 5 to 10, and they've increased the damage by 100%. So in other words, that Spike Grenade is going to last a shorter period of time, but it's going to output more damage in a shorter period of time. The total damage is going to remain unchanged. How many times have we as Night Stalkers gone out there, shot someone with Shadow Shot, and not actually get the effect until about 1 or 2 seconds afterwards? It's happened often in PvP. I've seen it a lot. I've seen it a lot in other streams. I've seen it in my stream quite a few times. So now that is going to change, everyone. Shadow Shot is now going to apply the suppression effect on impact. We'll get to that once I do my reaction. Next up, we have the smoke ability. Many times people were using smoke as kind of an extra deterrent, using the so-called wombo combo of a smoke grenade and a void wall grenade or a vortex grenade was very powerful. And a lot of times you'd see some really top tier players using sealed Ahamkara grasps so they can throw double smokes. It was devastating. So now they're going to make some modifications to it so that victims can get out of it a little bit easier. And there's some pretty significant changes to this. So what we're going to see is the impact damage is going to be increased by 34%. Impact suppression and damage over time is going to be reduced by a second. Jump suppression has been removed from the initial impact status effect. Base smoke cloud duration has been increased by 1 second, and venom cloud duration has been increased by 1 second. And venom jump suppression has been removed from cloud status effects. Vanish and smoke +1 agility has been removed, and snare cloud duration has been increased by 1 second. Most of the time, people were using the smoke grenade as envenomed, and they were using it, again, as a way to really put a lot of damage out to characters. But we're going to talk about that once we are done. With the biggest change is SHADESTEP. Again, it looks like they're affecting a lot of mobility perks. A lot of times you could use SHADESTEP to get out of very, very sticky situations. Now, however, Night Stalkers will only have the ability to SHADESTEP once before the ability has to recharge. But it's going to take time for the SHADESTEP to recharge. So instead of being able to SHADESTEP twice, you'll now only be able to SHADESTEP once, and then you'll have to let it recharge. Some other changes have happened to the Night Stalker. The Courage of the Pack now increases recovery, armor, and agility by 2 per stack. Courage of the Pack now stacks 3 times, so that's more of a viable option now. Lockdown increases smoke duration by 2 seconds, but plus 2 additional 2 seconds with the snare upgrade. Predator now includes the cooldown of shadow shot ability, and SHADESTEP again has been moved to a single dodge and a 3-second cooldown. So what are my overall reactions? Overall, I'm mostly happy with this. As a Night Stalker main myself, I really enjoy using the Night Stalker in most Crucible situations. I'm very, very happy that the Shadow Shot is actually going to apply the suppression effect instantly. There have been so many times I've used that to counter other supers and they haven't countered them. That's always been my logic, is that one super should have the ability to counter another. I do wish that Shadow Shot would be able to negate a Titan Bubble, because again, it is a super. But I'm okay with the ability to suppress that enemy instantly if they're using a super. I do like that. That's a really good thing. I think the changes to smoke are good. It's going to make it less overwhelming for some characters. There are going to be a lot of people who are unhappy with it because they've gotten used to the Wombo combo. Essentially, people are just going to be able to jump out of the smoke. That's why they're making the damage increase over time, because now you'll be able to jump out of the smoke instead of just being stuck there. So what they want to do is give you the damage bonus, but you can get out of that situation if you know what you're doing. SHADESTEP, oh SHADESTEP, I will miss these so much. You were my favorite ability on the Night Stalker. I loved it so much, but I knew that this day would come. I knew that there would be a nerf to SHADESTEP at some point, so I'm glad that they're doing it in this way. It seems mostly balanced. We'll have to see how it plays out against different encounters and up against all the new changes in the meta. It's going to be a very interesting week for PvP, to say the least. There are also some other classes that have been changed. The hunters are not the only ones that have been touched. So we're going to go through these things very, very quickly just to give you my take on them. The Twilight Garrison armor, while we've been talking about SHADESTEP, essentially has the same nerf as SHADESTEP. Essentially, you can't use it twice. You have to use it once, and then there will be a little bit of a refresh time. Again, same thoughts apply. I love Twilight Garrison. I'm a very mobile player, so that's where some of the fun things that I like to use. Again, the spike grenades for the Titans are going to have the exact same working that the Night Stalker would have. In addition, they're going to change the hammers a little bit on the Sunbreakers. There's been a lot of times people haven't been using the Sunbreakers. They've been opting for Strikers. So they're trying to bring Sunbreakers back up, but they also don't want to make it so Sunbreakers rule the landscape again. So Hammers of Souls are going to increase their damage by 10% against AI combatants. Fist of Havoc base damage is going to be increased by 50% and an additional 50% against AI combatants. So Fist of Havoc is going to be even more powerful now. Nova Bomb base damage has been increased by 50% and an additional 50% against AI combatants. I love this because I love being my Voidwalker in the Crucible. I think that the Nova Bomb has needed a buff for quite some time, so I'm very happy to see that. And Storm Trance damage has been increased 10% against AI combatants. Really like to see that. A couple other Sunbreaker buffs. The Hammer of Soul hammer travel speed is increased slightly by 1.3%, and Hammer of Soul hammer detonation radius has been increased by 10%. So it seems like there's some slight buffs to the Sunbreaker to bring them up to speed. So if you want to choose between a Striker or a Sunbreaker, they're both good choices. I think that the Sunbreaker is going to have more abilities, just a little bit more. It's going to bring it up, so now that's a viable option. I think this is a wise choice. Sunsingers, you are also going to receive a significant change to your meta. Most of them are tied to FireBolt and Viking Funeral Grenades. And I'll get to my reactions after I'm done. Again, most of the encounters that people run into with Sunsingers have to do with the FireBolt grenades plus the melee combos, or using FireBolt and then just getting one little shot off on someone. And so what they've done is they've adjusted it so players have a greater chance to deal with the situation. So FireBolt has increased its arming time by 0.2 seconds, and it's decreased its victim search radius by 1 meter. So that means that the range of the FireBolt has been shortened quite a bit. Sunsingers, I'm going to read this next part verbatim just so you can get a handle on everything it means, because it's a significant change to your meta if you've been using Viking Funeral and Firebolts. The biggest change to Sunsingers is the Viking Funeral perk. This perk will no longer extend the duration of Ignite damage over time effects. Instead, it now causes those effects to weaken the target to other sources of damage, but not the ignition itself. This will reduce the frequency and duration of the damage over time effect, but should still allow the Sunsinger some interesting build options involving Ignite. So Viking Funeral no longer extends the duration of Ignite effects, and Viking Funeral will now weaken targets afflicted with that ignition effect, causing them to take 5% more damage from all sources, stacking up to 3 times. Also, they've added a slight delay to the activation of Flame Shield for those people who go out with Warlock melees. That makes it so there's a very, very tiny brief window for an opponent to possibly win a melee trade with a Warlock, so it makes it a little bit more balanced. The Flame Shield will have a 0.3 second delay added before they're... Here's my overall reaction. I'm ecstatic. I've always thought that abilities and damage in the Crucible should be a reward for those high-level players who demonstrate great thumb skill in the Crucible. FireBolt Viking Funeral Grenades are not a high-skill weapon. You really just throw them out randomly, and you hope they stick, and you hope they hit someone, and it works. Now that ability has been taken away, so a lot of people are going to see some significant changes to their Sunsinger meta. I think this is a positive thing. Sunsingers, you knew that this day was going to come. You knew that they were going to touch Firebolts at some point, and today is the day that they are going to do that. I like the fact that they've changed the Flame Shield just slightly, albeit 0.3 seconds, but it's still enough of a change for people to react. So guys, really quickly, some quick weapons balancing that they're going to have in the patch as well. There's going to be an increased initial accuracy for hand cannons, but decreased accuracy drop for low range hand cannons. They're going to make the damage fall off curve steeper to better coincide with the intended effective ranges of hand cannons. And there's going to be a small increase to PvE damage to all hand cannons, the amount depending on class. The biggest change to this is now going to talk about the auto rifles. Many of you have been looking for those Doctrine of Passings, those Soul Stealer's Claws, those Arminius Ds with counterbalance. What's going to happen is 2 things. First of all, they're going to reduce the damage of high rate of fire auto rifles by 6%. So that high rate of fire auto rifle will no longer be the only go-to weapon. Part of that has to do with the amount of screen shake that the opponent feels when you are using a Doctrine of Passing or a Soul Stealer's Claw on that enemy. In addition, there's going to be a slight reduction to counterbalance effectiveness. They're going to reduce 80% of recoil angle instead of 90%. So that means instead of a straight up and down linear path of the bullets when you're using a weapon with counterbalance, it will now be an 80% recoil angle. A couple other bugs that they've fixed. They fixed incorrect UI bars on Red Spectre. They fixed exotic machine gun stability where some weapons were ignoring their own base stats for recoil. And they fixed the Defiance of Yasmin to have the corrected adjusted zoom for sniper rifles introduced in the last patch. Before, it was actually, many people knew that the Defiance of Yasmin essentially did not receive the sniper nerf that happened to all the snipers. The Defiance of Aim Assist, as some people called it, was one of those snipers that you could go to, which was really effective in the Crucible. The only thing it couldn't do is kill high armor targets out of their super. With the newest hand cannon improvements, they felt that the Hawkmoon was going to be too strong, so they're going to give it a little bit of a stability reduction. They're going to reduce it by -5. So the Hawkmoon is going to see a little nerf, but I doubt we'll see a lot of a change there just because of the way that they're changing the initial accuracy and stability buff to all hand cannons. So guys, that is everything you need to know about the weapons update in 2.3.0. It is a lot of changes. It's going to be a strange meta until we all figure out what weapons to use again. Again, thank you so much for watching. If you've got any questions, come by my Twitch live streams or stay tuned to this YouTube channel. And guys, I will see you next time in the universe of Destiny.